Hello, my name is Jacqui Taylor, and I'm going to be talking about the continent of Africa. I'm going to be talking about cultural inclusivity in a rural tourism and agritourism context. And I am going to be talking quite fast because Africa is a big continent. And if you do want the slide presentation or notes, they will be provided after the presentation or after the conference. So the two entities I'm going to be talking about that I founded, one is Rural Tourism Africa, and that focuses on the visitors, that focuses on the international market and domestic market, people who are visiting rural areas. And this actually includes areas where there is wildlife. And the other entity I wanted to talk about is Agritourism Africa. That includes or is targeting farmers, and farmers here are people who have access to land. It's not landowners only. So that's important to just point that out. I'm also talking about farming communities. I'm talking about the little villages that have sprung up because of farmers. So those are the two entities, and I'll go through various examples of projects as we go along. It's very important for me to actually state up front that the focus is on people. And in the past, the focus, unfortunately, in Africa has only been on wildlife. And so people have not really benefited from tourism, particularly those near wildlife areas. So it is important that we actually put people first. I am going to show you this map of the continent. I know most of you fit into it, but it's not meant in that way. It's actually to show everyone that over 60% of the global uncultivated arable land is actually in Africa. So we are an agricultural continent. And almost 98% of the rural households in 9 African countries engage in on-farm agriculture. Now, that's different to the type of agriculture that you might be referring to in the United States or in countries where you have companies that own farms. This is a different type of on-farm agriculture that we're actually talking about. That's actually mainly performed by women. So what are the key pillars of the Rural Tourism Africa NPO? Well, obviously it's poverty alleviation, because we're trying to get diversification within livelihoods. So where people maybe have focused on the land or agriculture before, we try and find income opportunities through agritourism initiatives that really increase the household income of these communities. And we really do that by focusing on the youth and women, because we want to promote the cultural heritage through the sustainable agritourism activities. The focus is on preservation, not on changing whatever the current situation is in these different areas to something that is more tourism friendly. We are not interested in cultural theme parks. Theme parks, I'm sure they're fine for other continents, but not here. So we also look at agricultural productivity through the land use diversification. No farmer or anyone with land uses 100% of that land. So that means let's look at the land. Let's see, can we diversify agri-processing? Can we have agritourism initiatives? So it's really agricultural based, and that's important because we're not talking about a controlled environment of using people. We're talking about looking at the land and making sure that the people who are living there get to have agritourism training, skills and capacity enhancement. So that's really the focus. Africa is one of the world's fastest growing tourism areas, regions, and that was a statement the UNWTO made. And why Africa? I get asked this often, and I think for me, primarily, there's lots of space, but there is a lack of knowledge, and a lot of what I do is storytelling, because there's unique foods, culinary experiences, crops, and I must mention the crops because pesticides are not really used here, so it's organic and low production costs. There's so much for people to actually learn within Africa, and it's not all that negative nonsense that you get via media. There is so much positivity. There's so much what I call genuine, authentic. I'm so blessed to actually do and work in an environment that I do, because I experience the most wonderful, warm-hearted welcome every time I visit different cultural communities and every time we start an agritourism project. So, obviously we have rich biodiversity. We don't have overcrowding. We do have farm stays and experiences that combine a rich cultural heritage and activities that are uniquely African. But everything that we do is based on the principle of people first. So tourism is the secondary focus for an agritourism business. So people first means cultural, community-based focus where, yes, it's obviously on agricultural land, but it's an educational process for people that are African people living on the land. And we do not want to see people going to urban areas which are overcrowded. So we focus on the people first approach. We have, and all agritourism businesses will largely have the same project interlinked base. And that is really, you identify the project or the initiative. And by doing that, you are including the promotion and preservation of the culture through tourism. And then, what I call the normal corporate business principles come in: sustainable management, coordination and development, marketing and promotion, capacity building. But I don't want to make this an academic conversation, because for me, it's very much about communities and the people that I meet. And I can't go through each country in Africa, and I'm apologetic. Maybe I should do a series and we go from country to country, but I will just focus on a few. And I know my wonderful sister, Maria from Uganda, is going to focus on Uganda. So Maria, I haven't put Uganda in, but please don't pick up the phone and tell me that I've ignored Uganda. It's just simply I know you're going to actually include it. So yeah, really just a couple of case studies. So Namibia, it's got a world-class focus on including communities in the conservancies, in the wildlife areas, in the whole of Namibia. And you will find this on the Ministry of Ecotourism, Environment, Forestry and Tourism website. You've got 86 communal conservancies. That means that the community is involved in those conservancies. So they have a say in the running of those conservancies, in the managing of those conservancies. And there are 42 conservancies that involve communal forests. And it truly is an outstanding example of how to include communities with tourism. And I must really say there are a lot of different cultural groups they have so much to teach the world. Obviously, you've got the Kalahari San, the Bushmen, you've got the Ovo Herero, the Botswana, the Namara. I just can carry on, but they really are amazing communities, and I haven't met a person that has not had an extraordinary experience. And I must take and credit Peter Hain Kasapua, who's the founder of Ukai Wilderness Safaris. He started an NPO that focuses on the Namibian lives, the lives of Namibians through sustainable tourism projects. And that includes traditions and cultures in rural environments. So Namibia, I'm just a serious wow. You've done amazing work in this space. Then I want to go on to Rwanda, and again, a country that really has embraced community tourism, and they've done this through the cooperative system in rural areas. And the experiences that I had really on the ground, made amazing friends, everybody so welcoming. So I learned everything, how to do the dance, which is really, really quite hectic. So I sort of bowed out halfway because you've got to be very fit, to catching fish, these tiny little fish at night, and use lanterns, so it's paraffin lanterns, and that attracts these little fish to the surface. And then a variety of different things, from making food, and gosh, exploring different community art centers, just absolutely amazing community experiences. So yes, please do look at the site, and there are a number of I would say projects that really, I thought they had so much to teach me, from picking tea to the whole tea processing to coffee grinding. There was so much I learned during my stay there that it was truly an amazing experience. And then on to South Africa. Well, there's one project that I do really want to talk about, and that's the trails and bicycle trail running and hiking farm hotel. So it's the first cycling hotel in Africa, and there's a group of individuals that use their skills and influence. So they'd come from a business background, and all they wanted to do was to give back to the community around the hotel, the rural community. So they formed a partnership with the local NPO called Grabo Beautiful. And one of the examples that I really love is a recycling project. And if children recycle, and it's obviously organized and coordinated, then they can earn points that go towards getting a free bicycle, but they've got to commit to various things. And I've mentioned recycling, but it can also be improving their school grades. And once their bikes are earned, their bicycles, the beneficiaries are encouraged to improve their cycling skills. And there are a couple of, and I've got to mention Peter Silva. He's what I call a cycling nut. He's one of these people that has to cycle every day. And he holds regular training clinics to improve the bicycle skills of the local community. And then also one of my absolutely favorite activities in South Africa is a sand culture and educational center called Ecuatu. And they've done amazing work there. There's a museum, there are unique tours, there's accommodation, restaurants, and the principle behind it was to reteach the San who had lost their culture because had gone into more urban areas. It's to teach the skills of the San so they could reclaim and share their heritage, but in their own way. So that's another community project that's just awesome. And just do look it up. Then the other project that I wanted to talk about was an amazing center in Ghana. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kente Cloth, but it is beautiful. It's hand woven. And there's a rural tourism center there that includes agritourism activities, like visiting the cocoa farm in the surrounding areas. But what I like is the participation of the community. So you see the Kente weavers at work, you see the naming ceremonies, the drumming, the dancing. And I think the fact that it is community and has the blessing of the Ashanti King is a wonderful way to actually experience the rural lifestyle in Ghana. So moving quickly on, because I know I'm approaching my 20-minute cutoff. I think if we have a look beyond agritourism and rural tourism, the COVID pandemic really highlighted the over-reliance on the one sector tourism in Africa, where 1 in 10 jobs were reliant on the sector. And, it wasn't, we don't have the same funding as in Europe or America. So no one got money. It really, I would say, even from my perspective, it's probably been the toughest period ever in my life. But the focus was really on keeping projects going and sustainable. So it was really, really, really busy. So that I can look back at this, a lot of learned, a lot of different communities learned, and diversification is definitely going to be a prerequisite. So if you talk about diversity and diversification of agricultural land, or in an agritourism context, you're talking about agri-processing and various other financial sort of benefit or income streams from agriculture. But yes, that is, it's also the conservation projects really, really struggled. It was a tough time.
Unfortunately, we have to cut off Jacqui, but if anyone's interested in seeing the rest of the presentation, you can probably reach out to Jacqui Taylor, and you can find me after this if you'd like her contact information. Our next presenter is Philip Ackerman-Leist, speaking on deep agritourism with a museum in the middle. Welcome.
What's that?
Sure, yeah, never hurts, thank you. Yeah, well, hello everyone. So wanted to share a very special place in my heart, Brunenberg Castle in the Alto Adige, the Südtirol, South Tyrol region, so not far from our Innsbruck friends here. And it's a place that I first went in 1983 as a student. And you know, over the years of going back, living and working there for about 4 years over this time period of the last 4 decades, just have really come to recognize what I would call the potential of deep agritourism, the capacity to take it to the next level, you know, and really find ways in which to influence people on a deep level, really by anchoring things with the museum. So the history, the culture, all of the pieces that are there. And I think it's a pretty extraordinary model, one that you typically don't find. I'm a fan of living history, living agricultural museums. And so often, I think those are neglected when we talk about the agritourism piece. And so we're going to do a presentation with several of us who are beaming in, including Michael Rachewiltz, who, let's see if we can, hopefully I'll be able to, yeah, there, jump into, whoops, sorry, to give you a little more context, we're actually, skipped a slide for some reason. Let's see if I can get it to go back. Just go back one slide.
The clicker isn't the opposite. Go up. Up to the left, go up to you.
Manually.
So it won't move either direction. Oh, yeah. So if we could go back one prior. Okay. All right. Then my apologies. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump forward. There was. All right. So I've got 2 folks who are joining in here. Michael Rachewiltz, who is now overseeing most of the operations of the museum, and he's going to walk you through kind of how this all came to be and why we feel like this is particularly important to agritourism. And then another colleague, Sharon Palmer, will be joining us from California to talk about what we've been doing together collectively, all 3 of us, for leading study tours focusing on topics related to registered dietitians. And so we'll dive in. So if Mickey is here, Mickey will let you go ahead and get going.
Yeah, thank you. Can we jump back 3 slides or otherwise? Otherwise, right. I can try to share my screen.
Yeah, I'm not sure where. Yeah.
The other direction.
Yeah. Something went missing on this. Sorry, folks. I'm not sure. Mickey, we were looking for the one with the map, correct?
Yeah.
Oops, that's going forward. Yeah, we should be able to. Right. Yeah, slide 2 is the one we were looking for. It is slide 2. Okay. All right. Maybe there's something that happened. Okay. Well, Mickey, I think we go with the flow here.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Well, you'll have to imagine some of the slides then, I guess. So thank you first for having me. My name is, as Philip already said, Michael Rachewiltz, and I'll talk a little bit about Brunenburg. Now, what you would see is a picture of a farm in a steep slope. And I would like to start with that picture and the quote also from a local photographer, Gianni Bodini, who, having made that picture, wrote, quote, sustainable, I can't hear the word anymore. And when I see a picture like this with these incredible steep slopes, I think of the many centuries in which people didn't even know the word, but really lived that way. So I think that Gianni Bodini here raises 3 important points in this quote. First, in a somewhat positive sense, the word sustainability seems to describe complexity in its conceptual vagueness, and somewhat interpreted more negatively, it has become also a placeholder for whatever people want to understand by it. And second, Bodini points to the problem that we've been talking about a sustainable lifestyle for far too long. And we also set honorable goals, but rarely have we actually approached those goals. And that means that it's not a lack of knowledge, but that what we actually need is a cultural reorientation. And I think third, Bodini also addresses one of those many cultures that no longer exist, but that actually lived sustainably. In this case, the former mountain farmer as a self-supporter. So from that example, you can see there's an essential connection between the discussion of sustainability and culture. And in a broad sense, culture just encompasses our entire worldview, our values and beliefs. And all these things are related to concepts, to mental images, representations, or also more generally, not only linguistic terms that structure our worldview. And as you all know, since the Brundtland report, people often talk about pillars or dimensions of sustainability. However, since it should also be about rethinking our entire way of life, our culture, a 4-pillar model has often been proposed in which culture stands as the 4th pillar of sustainability. So on the question of the role of cultures in sustainable development, we can roughly distinguish 3 aspects. So one is culture in sustainable development. So it stands as the 4th pillar of sustainability alongside the other ones. And here, the primary concern is to preserve cultural capital, the knowledge, the cultural heritage, and so on. So it's also about the cultural diversity for future generations. In culture for sustainable development, it has a mediating role to achieve the goals of the other dimensions. And culture, in its broadest sense, as sustainable development, it is an overarching development. It's an dimension where culture here is, so to say, the foundation of sustainable transformation toward an ecological society. All of those roles of culture are important, and we can also think of them as a spectrum from kind of left to right, from more anthropocentric to an interaction with nature, to a more ecocentric, deep ecological approach. I think, and now there should be a picture of the museum. I think museums fulfill a valuable but also underestimated function in all 3 approaches. So let me take you on a quick tour of Brunenburg. Yeah, I guess it jumps over to those slides. So our museum is an agriculture museum. Inspirations that led to the establishment of the museum come from my great-grandfather, the poet Ezra Pound, my grandfather, Boris de Rachewiltz, and also the research of my father, who is also the founder of the museum. At the moment, as you can see in these pictures, there's 3 generations actively involved. My grandmother on the left side, our parents in the middle and on the upper right side, and my brother and me. The original goal, so next slide, please, I think, if it works. So the original goal of the museum was a linguistic one. It was to capture the names of the old tools, the ways of working, and so on. What we want to convey is that, as we call it in the South Tyrolean dialect, the Viertel, the skill, the metis, what the ancient Greeks already appreciated, and that makes survival in the steep slopes of the mountains possible in the first place. Next slide. Thank you. We are a real museum, which means if you look at the ecom, the standards of what museums should do, we collect, we preserve, we do research and communicate, we educate, and so on. But next slide. We are also more. So we are not only an agriculture museum, but we also have a farm, which is a very essential and integral part. My brother, next slide, is the farmer, and I think a very innovative one at that. So what we do is we let students actively work on the farm. Next slide. They're an essential part also of the entire process, but we also offer courses to educate themselves through excursions. They learn about the environment, the geology of the Alps, and the customs and traditions. And as you can see from this picture, they also help us cook. Finally, we also organize cultural events, special exhibitions and concerts, and from time to time, we also publish something. And all these activities, I think, help to strengthen this, what I've called here, what I had introduced here, this fourth pillar of cultural sustainability. And with that, I would hand over to Sharon.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Palmer. I'm a registered dietitian, and I was fortunate enough to not only be a student and go to Brunenberg within my education with Philip as our professor, but also later to take groups of dietitians to the farm and to learn about the cultural and sustainable food ways. So this was really a great model, not only for dietitians, but also for Brunenberg. And basically, we took a group of dietitians to the farm, and we created this program. You can see a photo here of the dietitians that were involved in it. And it included all the events, the meals, the education, the travel. We just picked them up at the airport and dropped them off at the end of the event, the lodging. And it did take a fair amount of planning. It was a small group of 12 dietitians with just 3 of staff and 1 tour operator. But we had to plan the event and, of course, create a timeline, a schedule. We had the dietitians do pre-reading so that they were ready to go when they got there. We did group Zoom meetings to get them ready so that, you know, their expectations were met. And we created, you know, registration form, participant information gathering. And then we had to promote the event to fill it, which was important in order for it to be economically sustainable. We had to fill that event. So we picked all the dietitians up at the airport. This is the group of dietitians, the first group that went. And then we had a little opening session. And these are some photos of the dietitians that were at the event. We've had 2 groups of dietitians. We had another group planned, but COVID got in our way. So these are some examples of some of the activities that we did. And if you want to show the next slide, some of the things that we did, I think we missed one slide, but I'll just go over it really quickly. Some of the activities that we did with the dietitians is that they worked on the farm. We had culinary education. We had instructors come in to help educate them on some of the food ways and the culinary traditions. We had a wine education because the farm produces wine. We had lots of local culinary field trips, whether it was making bread or cheese, learning about the local food ways. We had numerous food tastings outside of the farm as well as on the farm with beautiful farm-to-table meals. You saw some photos of that. We learned about local foods and ingredients, and of course, even hiking and field experiences. So the dietitians gave us amazingly positive feedback for this event. They really enjoyed it. Many said it was, you know, an experience of a lifetime. They had enjoyed the camaraderie, the networking, the passion. And after 3 years, these groups of dietitians are still regularly meeting, and they can't wait for another event. Now, one of the big things we did is we offered continuing education credits because healthcare professionals like dietitians need those. And I think that was very attractive. So this could be a good marketing strategy for these events, is to offer education. And we kept the prices really reasonable. So we hope that we can continue bringing groups of healthcare professionals like dietitians back for more experiences. So thank you very much. And I'll pass it off. I think Philip is speaking next, right?
All right, I'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Sharon, and also Mihi. I think the points that we'd like to bring out here at the end is that there's potential to do much more of this, and healthcare professionals are folks that we really need to pull into the sustainable agriculture, sustainable food systems world, find new and different ways to do this education, really to take us back. In some cases, as I said, we go back to the Iceman 5,300 years ago, look at the diet and what was found in his GI tract and move all the way forward. These points I think are really important, that we need to combine all of these elements whenever we can to provide more of a deep agritourism experience. Museums give the opportunity to connect people with locals that might not happen in the same kind of way. There's this deep appreciation for the foodways and what got that food to the table. It becomes intergenerational, in ways that sometimes agritourism doesn't. It also really provides for the farms themselves, like Nick, Mickey's brother, to be able to sell things they might not be able to sell otherwise because you've got, quote unquote, a captive audience. It also provides this ability, as Mickey put so well and eloquently, that we put sustainability into a historical context to remind us where we are. And having sometimes that cultural shattering is really important for us. And it offers us a litmus test for the current culture and future trajectories, just these reminders of what was, what still can be in some new forms. And finally, these things don't come without effort and sacrifice. And I just have to thank Mihi and all of his family for what they've done over the years. It's a work of love. It's a work of just real sacrifice now for 50 years. The 50th anniversary is coming up, and it's built on their backs, just as so many of the things in the Tyrol are also carried on one's back. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and happy to answer any other questions down the road, outside of this session. So, and I think we will have the emails for everybody here, so you can contact us if that's helpful at any point. So, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for anybody online? I guess I'm curious.
I'm always curious about marketing techniques, and I am a registered dietitian, so I love that idea. Yep. And I'm curious how they reached that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sharon can say more. Is Sharon, you still there? That's it. So today's dietitian was certainly helpful. Some connections there. Kind of that, once word got out after we did the very first group, then it didn't take long in the dietitian world to build up to the point that we've got a waiting list now. And I don't know if Sharon is there, if there's anything okay. So it just that, as you know, HEN with the ADA, the Health Environment Nutrition group of the ADA has also been very helpful. Some of those folks have been on the tours. Some of the podcasters in the health and nutrition world have been on. So yeah, it's naturally gravitated, and now I think we can't quite meet the demand. So, yeah. One more question?
If I can.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm curious if the museum has affected agritourism in the region at all. Like, if maybe you guys have any partnerships with other farms or anything like that that you could elaborate on.
Yeah, and Mickey, are you there still, or?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I think so. If we have a partnership with other farms, or?
Yeah, so as a museum, an agricultural museum, have you affected agritourism in the larger region?
Oh, affected them. Well, I think there's a lot of agritourism in our region, and in one way or the other, we all inspire each other. We learn from each other. But I can't say that it's like that we're like a major player in this. Yeah.
And sometimes they're too modest. And one of the things that's been magnificent that they've done over the years is they'll have an Ausstellung, they'll have an exhibition focused on a specific topic like chestnuts or potatoes or krauts. And then that ends up also bringing in speakers. Sometimes it brings in art events and some of the farmers and other things. So I think Mickey and his family are very humble about what they actually do. So they keep these things alive in lots of really integrated ways. that spin out. So, yes, yeah. So Mickey, this would be a question for you. So they're developing an agricultural museum in India, and what are your suggestions for increasing foot traffic? I believe is what so bringing people in, what things seem to work.
I have to admit, I wasn't able to follow the other presentations, but you mean now from other countries, or
how do you generate the foot traffic and the visitors in the museum? What is it that attracts them and brings them to Brunenburg?
Yeah, there we are somewhat, I would say, lucky that it's a very touristy region, so they stumble into the museum. But no, there is, of course, there's a lot of museums in our area. Like South Tyrol has twice as many museums as the big area around Munich, so which has twice as many inhabitants. But I think since there is also a lot of tourism and interest by people who come to our region, so far it works pretty well that people actually also are interested in coming to see the museum.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you all so much for your time. And I know folks, we have the farm tours are coming up here. Mickey and Sharon, thank you for joining us. Thanks so much for all the help and tech support.